Hello again. There is an old saying about whether this or that event is good for the Jews. There are jokes going back over a century about things like some old Jew listening to his grandson talking about Babe Ruth, the American baseball player, and then asking, "This Babe Ruth, is he good for Jews?" Like all good jokes, this one contains an element of truth, for there is a tendency on the part of Jews to look at events, domestic or international, and ask if there are any negative connotations either for them or, since 1948, for Israel, the Jewish homeland. I make no comment about this mindset, other than to remark that it is certainly a thing. When looking at the attacks on Iran and the death of its leader, there cannot be the least doubt that this is good for Jews and spectacularly good for Israel. How good it is likely to be for Britain, though, is another matter entirely. In fact, it's likely to prove something of a disaster for us, leading to a sharp increase in immigration from the Middle East, which is not altogether an enticing prospect for most of us. To understand what is likely to happen and what Israel probably wants to happen, we cannot do better than look at a precisely similar sequence of events which took place 15 years ago and see how that affected this country. I am talking about a fanatical Muslim dictator who had held power for decades in his country and was suspected of developing nuclear weapons. He was toppled and killed by American airstrikes aided by this country with the hope of liberating his nation and paving the way for democracy. I am talking about Libya under Colonel Gaddafi, whose death 15 years ago after Western military action was very similar to the death yesterday of the Iranian leader. What was the result of overthrowing the Libyan regime? Most viewers will, I suspect, have seen images of the many black African asylum seekers crossing the English Channel hoping for asylum in this country. How do they suppose that those people have reached the shores of northern France from sub-Saharan Africa? The answer is, of course, that they have entered Europe via Libya. The so-called Arab Spring saw the fall of governments in Tunisia and Egypt. It resulted too in the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi, for over 40 years the undisputed ruler of Libya. The nation then descended into chaos from which it has never recovered. In the disorder of the civil war which followed Gaddafi's overthrow and murder, Libya became the favoured staging post for those from sub-Saharan Africa seeking to reach Europe. This was a profitable business for the warlords and people smugglers who were able to exploit the desperation of migrants who had crossed the Saharan desert. Many were transported across the Mediterranean in small boats and then made their way to France, with this country as their ultimate destination. The overthrow of the Libyan dictator didn't result in the establishment of a stable democratic government in Libya, but rather several governments vying for power, a number of independent city-states, and vast areas ruled by numerous warlords and bandits. This is the situation in Libya today. It is a failed state. I have not the least doubt that the Israelis hope for something of the kind to emerge if the current Iranian regime can be removed. This is the best possible guarantee that no future regime in Iran will try to acquire nuclear weapons or have the time and money to operate proxy groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and Houthis in Yemen. A failed state would be the best possible news for Israel. It would be good for Jews. Not quite so good for us, though, because it would mean a huge flood of refugees heading west into Europe via Turkey. There's already a large Iranian community in Britain, so this country would be an obvious destination. If Iran became a failed state and civil wars were raging, they would be assured of asylum here. Then, too, if Iran had no stable government, then all the Afghans wishing to flee their country and head this way be able simply to cross into Iran and head here as well. In case anybody hasn't noticed, Kabul is currently being bombed as well at the moment by Pakistan. I am sure that the conversion of Iran into a failed state would suit the Israelis very well, as it would make them safe from the threat of both nuclear weapons and also those groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis. In short, it would be good for the Jews, but bad for the British